Why is it that it is so easy to find discouragement in the world? There's decay and debris literally all around us. There's wars raging on across the world. There's economic downturn here home. I mean, it's not that kind of global scale stuff going on. All we have to do is look at our own personal lives. And there's death and disease. There's depression and loneliness. It seems that our world, our own personal world, is always caving in around us. Sometimes it feels like God is just never going to answer another prayer. Sometimes it feels like the world is spiraling out of control and there's nothing we can do to stop it. Sometimes it feels like everything in our lives is just always going to be unfortunate. But maybe, just maybe, we have this whole idea of unfortunate backward. And in reality, there is no such thing as unfortunate. Now, if any person deserves to be called unfortunate, I think a pretty good candidate would be Boethius. He was a 6th century Roman senator, and he spoke out against corruption, for which he was met with accusations of treason. He was arrested. He had everything stripped from him, all of his honor, his family, his wealth, his prestige, his reputation, everything just down the drain. And he waited a year to be executed. Now, Wikipedia's description of his execution is very blunt. He may have been beheaded, clubbed to death, or hanged. It is likely that he was tortured with a rope that was constricted around his head, bludgeoned until his eyes bulged out, then his skull was cracked. Now, despite all that, despite having everything stripped away from him, being thrown in a prison cell, waiting to die for a year, despite all of that, he remained firm and decided to pen a treatise that essentially concludes there is no such thing as unfortunate. His book, The Consolation of Philosophy, features himself as a narrator, Boethius the narrator, being visited by this fictional character called Lady Philosophy, who comes and consoles Boethius in his anguish. Her medicine is both very Christian and very Stoic. Lady Philosophy reminds Boethius of the futility of the grass is greener on the other side of the fence mentality. She tells him that no one is easily satisfied with the state of his fortune. We can think that wealth or honors or powers or whatever it might be that we're seeking will give us happiness, but whatever happiness we get is very much a fleeting thing. It doesn't last. It's like smoke. It's there for a little bit and then it just floats away in the sky, never to be seen again. We in life, we struggle to find happiness. We're always looking for the next thing. We think if we could only have a new job, or we could get married, or we could get a new car, or we could have a family, we could live that American dream with that white picket fence. We think that once we get to the other side of that white picket fence, everything will be roses and sunshine. But then what happens when we get to the other side of that white picket fence? We find out that it's not all roses and sunshine. But if we take a step back, after we're on that side of the white picket fence, and we look at our situation from other people's perspective, we find that often we're the envy of others. Even Boethius, while he was in prison, recognized this. Lady Philosophy asks him, "How many are there, do you think, who would consider themselves almost in heaven if they attained the smallest part of what remains of your fortune? This very place that you call exile is a fatherland to those residing here." And then Lady Philosophy gets to her thesis, one of the most central claims that she's making throughout her entire consolation of Boethius. I imagine she looks him in the eye and tells him this: there is no situation that is miserable unless you think it so. Likewise, every condition is blessed when a man endures it with an untroubled spirit. Whatever our lot on the wheel of fortune, Lady Philosophy's point is that our circumstances really don't matter at the end. At the end of our lives, we leave this world with as much as we brought into it. Real blessedness must be found outside of our circumstances. It must be found outside of the things here on earth, the things under the sun. There's no sense in denying ourselves from properly taking pleasure in the things that God has blessed us with. That's good and well. But I think Scripture's point is very clear that the things under the sun, the things here on earth, are not going to satisfy us. That's something, if you pick up the book of Ecclesiastes, you might look at that and you'd be like, this is a really depressing book, because it talks about the vanity of life. It talks about the vanity of everything under the sun. But the point that is made over and over and over again in Ecclesiastes is that it's the things under the sun that leave us wanting more. It's the things here on earth, the temporary things in life, that leave us wanting more. It leaves us wanting something from eternity, because that's what we were really meant to have as humans. We were meant to have a relationship with God that has to be eternal. Our reward as Christians is not in storing up fortune here on earth, but rather in storing up fortune where moth and rust do not destroy. If you're looking at life from this perspective of the things here on earth are not what's going to satisfy you, but it's the things in eternity that is going to be satisfying to you, that's going to give you the joy and contentment that you are seeking in life, then you're going to have this eternal mindset. Now, what does this eternal mindset lead to? It leads to cultivating a character that makes you become more and more like Christ. To become more like Christ is the goal of every believer. And the storms that are brought into our life tend to do that. That is something that Scripture states over and over again. But I think perhaps James states it the most plainly. He writes, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." Now, I realize this can be a really tough pill to swallow, because when we encounter devastating things in life, depressing things in life, it can be hard to face those things without becoming downtrodden, without becoming disillusioned about life and wanting it all to end. But when we face those trials head on, when we face it with God's grace, and we face it learning contentment in the process, then we find that those trials actually help us become more like Christ. It helps us cultivate stronger character so that we can face more trials later on. It helps us be a good example to others who are going through similar things, less things, worse things. It can be an encouragement to other people when they see us walking faithfully. At the end of the day, it's those seemingly unfortunate things in life that help us grow the most. It's those seemingly unfortunate things in life that turn out to be not so unfortunate after all. Lady Philosophy concludes, "Do you have in your hands the ability to create the kind of fortune you want?" So if you're going through a tough circumstance, if you're going through something that feels unfortunate, embrace it as an opportunity to grow more. Not as something that is unfortunate, but something that is fortunate. Because it's not something that is about the here and now, but is about the eternity. It's not about trying to find the thing that will give you the most pleasure, but the thing that will bring you the most eternal joy. Embrace those tough circumstances as a gift from God to learn to rely on Him. Embrace those tough circumstances, those unfortunate things in life, as an opportunity to cultivate the kind of character that Christ modeled in His life. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. It's the first video of this kind that I've really tried making for a few years. I'm experimenting with the idea of making more, so if you enjoyed it, please be sure to let me know so that I will be encouraged to make more of them. If not, well then, I guess you probably won't have even gotten this far, so